we'll just get started, but just a couple of ground rules before we get started. You see a chat window. Why don't you just go ahead and let me know from which city you're joining us from? If you can just go ahead and let me know on the chat window. Great. Vadodara, Charlotte, North Carolina, Jaipur, Bangalore, Haryana, Bhubaneswar, Ahmedabad, Gurgaon, Vijayawada, Bhopal, Jammu and Kashmir, very interesting, Bombay. Someone calling it Mumbai, someone calling it Bombay, right? Noida, New Delhi. I hope all of you are staying safe, right? And, all of you might have had a slightly turbulent 1 month, right? So I understand that. So what I'm going to do in this session is I'm not going to be just offering you advice on whether you should be applying an R4. If I were to understand this correctly, and you can let me know by putting in a yes in the chat window, that one of your intent is also to kind of look at this larger question, right? Is an MBA important? Will an MBA continue to be relevant? How will the recession impact on the the MBA programs? Correct. So it's like at a macro level that you want to know, because tactically I think there is a lot of information available on the websites, on various forums, people discussing about deadlines and all that. But I will try to keep the agenda slightly larger. And what we will also be doing is we will ensure that through the program, we will have most of the technical issues, hopefully not have any technical issues. In case there are any technical issues, I have someone in my team. I'm just looking up if Manisha is online. So let me just check on. Yeah, hi Manisha. So, she's going to be helping me through the session. And she will also be sharing some important links that I wish you go through so that you get a better sense of certain next steps. All right. So before I get started, all of you are able to hear me loud and clear. So, yeah. So in case you have any technical issue with the audio, please check, and Manisha will also help you with that. All right. And let's just kind of try to focus for the next 1 hour, right? That's about 60 minutes. And I promise I'll answer a lot of questions, and at the same time I will also make sure that we have about 10 to 15 minutes towards the end to answer any specific queries that you may have. Right? So a little about myself. Why am I kind of coming and telling you this? Well, my name is Arun, and you probably have seen me on YouTube. I'm the founder of Crackverbal, but more importantly, I feel my experience comes from having worked with students who have not just taken the GMAT and done well, but also having worked with successful candidates over the last many years, and also having worked with the admission committee in terms of interacting with them, trying to understand what is the formula, so to speak, right, that they seek for in students, right? So what I wish to do is, one thing about the kind of content that you would have seen on Crackverbal is we always have the paid stuff that is exclusive for students, but we also give out a lot of content, and I just wanted to give you a couple of good sources of content that you can have. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my LinkedIn ID over there. So you can just go and search for Arun Jagannathan. I'm glad. And the other advantage you have is if you get connected with me on LinkedIn, I have over 12,000 plus connections, and many of them are my former students who are doing an MBA from many of the top schools. So if you see on LinkedIn, the way the connection works is if you are connected to someone as a second level, you would be able to directly connect with that person. So, that's one advantage of getting connected. And that's my email address. In case there is anything that I can help you with, I can put you with in touch with my team, right? But, what I wanted to discuss today is, through my experience, I'm going to also do some crystal ball gazing, right? So I'm also going to be looking a little into the future. So I will be making assumptions. So I will call out those assumptions as and when I make them, because what we are really doing here is, in this session, we are looking at having a decision-making framework, correct? So that's really my agenda, that you have a decision-making framework. So we will be talking about, should you do an MBA? What should you consider? What are the things that you need to keep in mind while you're looking at the round 4 application? And as I said, towards the end, I'll have a Q&A session. Here are some of our recent students. So we just picked the ones over the last month or so who have not just gotten a great GMAT score, but also made it to a school of that choice. So if you see, these are not scores necessarily in 760, 770. I think that's another myth that is sometimes sold, that you need a 760, 760. Obviously, a 760, 770 score is great for your profile. But if you see, we have got admits to great schools with scores like 700, 710, some of them even with 670, 680, right? So as I said, a couple of free resources to get you started. We have, a way to kind of get all the free GMAT resources. We have actually put it on. So you can just have, Manisha has just sent you the link. So you can actually download some of the things that we have for you, right, over here. And also, I would request you to check out our YouTube channel. So we put out a lot of content over there, and also our blogs, and on the website, we have great resources as well. All right. So you can copy the links from what Manisha has put on the chat window. All right. I also wanted to just let you know that those of you who are my students, I see many of my students also over here. So I also teach. So I take the weekend live classes at Crackverbal. So if today's session is any sense of what to expect on the weekends, this is how it is. Manisha is also giving you a link to register in case you are interested to attend the free live session. I'm going to be taking questions in sentence correction, critical reasoning. I also have a reading comprehension section. So, you can just come in and have a look. I'm pretty sure that the 2 hours that you will spend with me will be insightful and engaging. All right. So let's get down to the main agenda, right? Should you do an MBA? Correct. Should you apply in R4? And then Q&A. So these are the 3 main blocks that I have. So let me get started with the first question, which is, should you consider an MBA at this point? And if you ask me, it's a good thing that all of you are sitting here on a nice weekday evening, listening to someone talk to you about their career, right? About your career. Because what it tells me is, it tells me that all of you, right, are interested in, doing something about your career, doing something about the way things are happening at work. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you a slightly larger framework, as I told you, to kind of consider how you should be looking at your career, and especially over the next few years, correct? So let me just share my, screen with you so that All right. So here is the general broad framework, right? Whenever you're looking at an MBA, don't think of an MBA. First, I would like you to look at what is your goal, right? So what's your goal? And when I say goal, I'm talking about short-term goal, long-term goal. What is it that you really want? Because see, after a point, the challenges that you'll have in your life, the kind of aspirations that you have in your life will also change. So what is it that at this point you're able to see, where you want to go, correct? Second is, you are considering where you are right now, correct? So this is you, right? So this is where you are. So you have some amount of background, correct? Which tells you that maybe these goals are important for you, right? And you of all the possible options available, you have decided to think of doing an MBA to reach your goals, correct? Now, your goals could be as simple as earning more money, correct? But it could be also lofty, saying, you know, I want to create an impact. And what I've realized is that that people in leadership positions, people who actually create impact, they have certain qualities about them, correct? There are certain things that make them successful. So in my desire to get those qualities in order to equip myself better for a future role, right? I wish to do an MBA, correct? So all of these are valid reasons, right? So on one extreme, it could be purely money. On the other extreme, it could be something like power and authority, right? That's also perfectly okay. Now, the way you need to look at an MBA in terms of an ROI. So this is a question that a lot of people ask, which is how do I calculate the ROI of an MBA, correct? So I would probably look at it this way, that what is the probability of you meeting your goal, okay? Probability of meeting the goal. What an MBA does is it improves that probability. Remember, it is never going to make anything sure shot for you. You cannot say that I'm going to do an MBA and I'm going to become a consultant or I'm going to do this or that. What you're really doing is, the way I look at it from an ROI perspective is, you know, if I were to consider, you know, the lifetime earning of an MBA, correct? So if, let's say, this is how much you get paid, this is the number of years of experience that you have, correct? So the whole logic is that with an MBA, you'll have a particular graph, and without an MBA, you'll have a particular graph, correct? So with MBA, this is, let's say, without an MBA, correct? And many a times what happens is we tend to look at the ROI over here, right? If you calculate the ROI over here, to be honest, doing an MBA may not become, you know, may not make financial sense to you, correct? But the whole idea is that, you know, when you space yourself, let's say 10 years into the career, correct? At that time, there is going to be a certain delta that you're going to have with an MBA that possibly you may not get without an MBA, correct? So, you know, that's where the longer term value in an MBA comes. So if I were to tell you, you know, the reasons why usually, you know, people pursue an MBA. See, you can always tell the B school that I want to make more money, or my you know, job sucks, right? But B schools are not going to be very happy, because really those are not goals. There are wrong reasons for you to do an MBA, correct? Please don't do an MBA because, you know, I want to, you know, escape from my boss, or, you know, it's just like a, you know, short term kind of, you know, get rich quick scheme, right? The reasons to do an MBA is, you know, the first reason is reasons for an MBA. The first reason is, you know, if you ask me honestly, what is going to happen is that over a period of time, what you'll realize is that you would need more and more cross-functional exposure. So what is happening is the world is going from this, you know, fairly specialist mode to a generalist mode, correct? And one of the reasons the reason it's happening is, though there are people in core technology doing stuff, to a large extent today, if you understand how technology works, there is fairly, you know, the abstraction level is huge, right? Which means people are expecting that you constantly be learning new things. So you tend to be a generalist as you grow up the career ladder, right? One of the other problems with people who come with only one functional background is they look at a problem in a very unidimensional way. For example, let's say you get to be a CEO at some point in your career. What you realize is, you know, if you look at the chartered accountant way of looking at it, okay, the finance way of looking at it, if the problem statement to you is you need to, let's say, turn around the company and make profits, correct? The chartered accountant or the finance guy will look at, you know, how to cut costs. So your finance guy will always tell you, okay, in order for us to do that, we should cut costs. If you look at the marketing person will come and tell you, hey, you know, we need to increase our ad spend, correct? If you look at the product person, he will say, oh, you need to have this particular, you know, product feature. And the sales guy will, you know, give you a completely different pitch. You as a CEO, you as a senior manager are expected to understand how a company works, right? You cannot be, in this silo saying that, I'm just a technical expert or I'm a financial expert, right? The second thing that it does, and this is one of those intangible things, correct? It is basically, it hones your leadership skills. It hones your self-awareness, right? So leadership skills, and I'm going to use the word self-awareness. So what happens is, what they've realized is people over a period of time, especially if you look at someone like Satya Nadella or Sundar Pichai, correct? You could argue that they are Indians, but ask yourself, are they really Indians, right? They are what I call as a global citizen, right? Because they work with people from so many different cultures that there is a certain leadership skill that they are able to hone, correct? B-School is a perfect opportunity for you to spend 2 years working with people from different cultures, different functions, different way of looking at the world, correct? So if you're going to be a product manager or a consultant tomorrow, right, if that is your goal, one of the things that you need to realize is you need to, so there is an expression, there is an idiom that you might have heard, which says, to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, correct? Now, what happens is, if you are a technical guy, you'll always try to find a solution that is oriented in technology, right? Which is what I mentioned in the cross-functional exposure. But here is another problem. You also tend to be with people who are all similar to you, correct? How do we get this opportunity of meeting and, just being with people of different nationalities in, 2 years and really rethink the way you think? And the third thing is, what I would call as the brand and the network, right? So remember that, when you are going to be 45, right? I'm just making this up, okay? When you're 45, your job is not going to come because of what you know, correct? At some point, you need to realize that what you know is fairly, there is only so much you can know, correct? It is going to be who you know, right? And also, what do they say about you, correct? So if they think that you're a clown, right? Having a big network is easy way to get the word around that you're a clown, correct? But if they value what you bring to the table, and sometimes what happens with B-Schools is also it acts like an old boys association of sorts, correct? So if you were to kind of have any kind of request thrown into the group, there is a higher chance that they're going to come back with something favorable, correct? So that's what I wanted to say, that, and this is something someone told me that, 80% of what you're going to earn, right? 80% of what you're going to earn is going to probably come in the last 10 years of your life, right? So the whole idea is, am I better equipped at that point, right, to really leverage my experience? That's the question that you guys need to be asking, right? That's the question that you guys need to be asking yourself before we even get into the whole point on R4, right? So that was my first, overall view on that. Okay, what I think you guys should be looking at an MBA. Now, why should you be looking at doing an MBA now? Correct. Now I'm kind of getting into a smaller bandwidth of talking about 2020, right? Why should you be doing in 2020? Well, there are a couple of reasons why doing an MBA might make sense, though it looks contrary to logic, right? What does logic tell you? Your logic tells you that, when things are not going well, we should perhaps conserve cost, correct? Like conserve cash, because that's really the kind of mentality that usually kicks in, right? And I absolutely agree with you, right? That it looks scary, right? Sometimes I'm going to spend 50 lakhs, right? Or 1 crore. And I remember one of my students, she had come to me, just she had gotten admission to INSEAD, and a week before that. So she came and she said, Arun, the reality just sinks in that I'm going to be spending, she did a math and it came out to 5 lakhs a week, right? Or some bizarre number like that. It was 5 lakhs a month, sorry, which is about 1 lakh a week. And she said, when I wanted to actually sign the financial document, I was, tempted to kind of rethink my decision, despite having taken the GMAT and applied to a school and even gotten acceptance to a school like INSEAD, right? But guess what? It eventually worked out well for her. But the reason I'm saying this is it is a valid thought that you have, but it also, in some sense, is a good point because the way I see things panning out, and here is where I want to call out an assumption. The assumption is that the vaccination is going to be found sometime in 2021. Okay. And the assumption is that whatever people are telling with a 40-day lockdown, 60-day lockdown, we have seen it is not going to come down. And I think many of you saw, these images of people lining up in front of liquor stores. And I'm sure some of you might have done that also, right? Because 40-day hold up at house, you're dealing with human emotions. So I think we are expecting the thing to last for more than a few months, correct? And as experts are suggesting, if demand is going to get suppressed, then obviously the economy comes down crashing. Now, what happens in a bad economy, and I say this because I have some experience having dealt with students who were in the 2008 subprime crisis, correct? So they were caught in the middle of it, and something very similar happened. What happens is, in a bad economy, generally, and I'm speaking generally, right? It is not true for all of you, but your raises may be, in question, right? Your incentives may not come through. And that happens provided your job is actually secure, right? So what happens a lot of times, the thinking that students had even back then, and I'm talking about students even now, one of the thinking that they have is, let me go ahead and in 2020, apply to a B school, correct? And irrespective of how the job market is, let me graduate in 2000, let's say 2020 is the time of me applying, correct? I hope all of you understand. You will get admission in 2021, right? And if you get admission in 2021, pakka by next year, this whole thing is going to kind of blow over. Hopefully colleges will start, right? And better than that, the idea is you will graduate, if it's a 2-year program, you will graduate in 2023, correct? And, if the recession lasts for a few years, chances are 2013, when the, kind of market comes back, right? You are able to come back in a stronger market, correct? In a stronger job market. And this time around, what you also have is you have the credentials with you, correct? So if you had to take 2 years of your career, this should probably be the best 2 years to take off from your career. That is the first thing. And really, if you look at it, I see it as an investment in yourself. So here is a question that I have for you, and this is something I usually ask my students, which is, think of the time when you just graduated, correct? What was your salary? Just think about it, okay? Don't write it or don't let me know. Now think about your salary now, correct? Assuming that you've been working for a few years. Now think about it, look at the amount it's rise, right? Like it's risen. Now, is there any financial instrument, correct? Be it mutual funds or stocks or, land, or you take any investment, right? I guarantee that you cannot get a better ROI than by investing in yourself, correct? Investing in yourself is the biggest ROI. And, a lot of times we look at it and say, hey, what's the big deal here? I will, I'll figure out this thing. I'll do this course. I'll do that. But I think sometimes an MBA tends to be, larger than the sum of its parts, correct? So that's why I think doing an MBA now makes a lot of sense. There are people who have written something on the chat. My request is to push it to the Q&A window, right? If you can just put it in the Q&A window, I'll take a look at it in a short while, okay? Now, as I said, doing an MBA during a recession, correct? So what will be the financial risk, right? Will I be able to recover the ROI? And which are the safe schools to apply? Now, as I told you earlier, that there will be a risk in the short term. Think of it as a stock market, right? That is what Warren Buffett keeps saying, right? That, you have to invest when people fear, and you have to be fearful when people are, jubilant. So I think that right now, the way it looks, that, in a short term, there would be an impact, but my take would be to look at it from a longer term lens. If you're not okay with that, if you feel that, Arun, I am a kind of guy who can't think beyond, let's say, what I will be doing at the age of 30, that's also perfectly okay, correct? But there are, institutions which offer loan. So also the other thing you have to understand is there are institutes which will be offering you loan. These loans may also go up, right? In terms of the interest percentage for the loans will also go up. And there are many loans which are non-collateral, right? So they are taking a risk on you also, right? But I feel that that's something that you have to consider. Look at it as a longer term investment, correct? And then make the, kind of decision, right? I'll be talking about the schools, shortly, but what are the schools doing now? I want to tell you now from a school's angle. For a minute, stop thinking like a student, start thinking like a college admission, person, right? So I'm going to give you two statistics, okay? And these are statistics. So what is the KPI of the person at the B school, okay, who is in the admission committee, correct? So you understand the meaning of the word KPI, key performance indicator. What is it on which they are going to be measured, okay? MBA admission committees, okay? So there are two key metrics that they have. The first is, what is called as the, acceptance rate. So acceptance rate is, simply a map of the total number of people applying or the total number of people who are accepted divided by the total number of people who are applying, correct? Now, usually for the B school, right, the problem is not so much with this ratio because, if you look at a Kellogg or any of the top schools, you'll realize that they have a problem of plenty, right? So many people are applying, we are having only a few seats. But here is the interesting thing, which is the second KPI, right? This is something called as yield percentage, okay? The yield percentage is the number of people who enroll upon the number of people who are offered. Which means I could make my offer, right, to let's say 100 people, right? But let's say only 60% of them end up accepting my offer and joining the school. The problem that most schools are having is not with this metric, but with this metric. What has happened is they have offered, but they are not very sure whether those students would be enrolling this year. Okay. Now, what schools have done is schools have basically given an option to students saying you can do one of two things. If you have got an admission, you can defer the admission, correct? So you can come and join us next year. We will even, in fact, increase the class size. Don't worry, because we understand that you are in India. The flights itself will not, get started. US consulate is not open. Your finances are all stuck, correct? In such an environment, how do we possibly have you come in, right? So we are okay to defer you, join us next year. Option number two, you can take our online classes. So once the college starts, right, in case we are not able to have you on campus, you can do this online as well. Now, a lot of students are actually choosing, the first option, correct? And, people are not very keen on the second option, right? Because they feel that an MBA as an experience, right, should be experienced by being in the class. I have a couple of ways to look at it. The first way I'm going to look at it is, well, if you get through a school, a top school, and let's say the option in choice in front of you is to spend a semester online, correct? See, once you graduate, nobody is going to ask you that which year did you graduate, correct? As I told you, if you look at it as a longer term investment in yourself, nobody, which band did you graduate? So we had one semester. Nobody does that, man, correct? So I think, it's in a, this thing, but at the same time, I also understand and accept the fact that the experience may not be as great as you would like. if things were to be normal, correct? So that's the reason why a lot of students are opting to defer or in some case even withdraw, right? Because they are saying we'll see how the problem works and we will pan out. Now, because of this, what are the schools doing? Remember the yield percentage. They have to improve their yield percentage, correct? So what schools have done is they have, in some cases, extended deadlines to R3 because many of these R3 deadlines were around in March, correct? And they basically did not get applications because obviously, the way things were in March, especially in the US, right? It wasn't conducive to thinking about your life and career, right? So they actually have extended, and here's the other thing: a lot of schools have also added another round called R4, and that is precisely to say that if I get a student who's really interested to join our program this year and is okay even doing some kind of distance learning, we will like to have him on board, correct? So that's really the mentality of the R4, correct? Till now, as I started off today's webinar by saying that I would have never I would never told you to apply in R4, but the nature of things right now, the way it looks, I would imagine that an R4 also has kind of a chance, right? So I feel that there is a chance. I'll be getting into the details. Some of the B school updates, so Harvard basically said something around having a leap of faith. That was a kind of term that was used in the media, parodied actually. So what they are saying is that we are anyway going to be continuing, but it may begin virtually, you see this, in person or as a hybrid, correct? So they may also have, let's say there is enough and more Harvard Business School alum in India. So even if you don't get to, go to Boston, right? It is not going to be just Zoom classes. I would imagine that they may have workshops conducted in India also, right? Again, these are all hypotheses, correct? Similarly, we noticed that Kellogg actually went ahead and said that we empathize with you, right? That you weren't able to take the GMAT. So here is what we would like to do. Why don't we just go ahead and apply? We'll figure out the GMAT scores later. Correct? Because we understand that if you are really wanting to apply, why worry about it? But I hope all of you understand why they are doing it. Correct? Because at this point they don't want to restrict. Correct? They don't want to say, we want GMAT, we want this, we want that. They are saying, let me at least have those 10, 15 people who I'm kind of falling short of, correct? And that's really the number. So that I don't think the number is running into the hundreds, correct? I don't think that out of the class of 900 who got into Harvard, the number is probably like 800, 850 have accepted. Maybe 50 have not accepted, and maybe that number kind of grows. So the number as such is limited, but that's what schools are saying. So this is from the school website that any international admitted student who is unable to start due to a visa issue will be deferred to next year's MBA class. They are very clearly saying, and is also increasing the size of waitlist. So what will also happen is that they will increase the waitlist. So there is a very good chance that you apply and you don't get in, but you are actually put into this waitlist because now, depending on whether other candidates are coming up or not, your case may come up, right? So I hope you're getting a sense of what it is. Wharton, also said that you can admit it without a GMAT or a GRE test score. I think at this point, it is not really high on their agenda, correct? Because right now, they are just worried about students joining, correct? So what are the reasons you should consider to apply in R4? So anyone who's thinking about this question, I have like a checklist of 4 things that you need to consider. If any one of those 4 things has happened to you, you perhaps can look at an R4, right? So the first one is because of the COVID crisis, if you feel that your current industry or your current job is threatened and you think that things would change drastically and that you cannot wait till September 2021. Okay, that's point number 1, that you don't have that much runway, right? You are saying, you know what, Arun, I want to basically join the class of 2022, right? Which is the class that is going to be starting in fall 2020, correct? If you're committed to that, then yes, you should consider. Second, you applied in R, R1, R2. Let us say for whatever reason your essays did not make the cut and you got rejected and you said, well, let me reapply next year, correct? You could relook and apply in R4 also. The third is, remember this, and I'm going to say this in the next slide, but remember this, that the quality of the incoming class will not get compromised. I hope all of you understand this. Just because Kellogg is saying that it's opening up in R4, it is not going to take, are you okay attending online classes? Okay, then let me give you admission, right? This is not like some backdoor admission because you are, agreeing to attend the quality of the batch, as I said, they would always want to keep it, right, of a particular quality. So you need to have exceptional profile. And one more thing that I've heard, and when I've spoken to students, this is one more angle that students have bought. What they are saying is, we want to apply in R1 2020, correct? Which is, I'll apply in September. But what I want to do is, just as a trial, I want to apply to a few schools in R2, correct? If I don't make it, I will essentially be okay. I will wait and apply in R1, correct? But in case I do make it through a school in R4, then, why delay the inevitable, correct? So if you have any of these thoughts, well, these are all thoughts that people should be having, correct? What are the challenges that I foresee? Well, first of all, as I said, don't assume the admission is going to be easy. And in many cases, these schools have only deferred the GMAT score, correct? They have not cancelled it, which means eventually they still need that as a data point. But here is what I want you to think about, right? See, if you had taken the GMAT and let's say you scored a 760, right? I'm just giving an example, or a 730 for that matter. These schools have one data point about you, correct? Now, remember, when you're applying in R4, they will have one less data point about you. So it's very important that in your application, correct, you need to have a great application. Okay, let me be very clear on that. And you actually have to address this issue that if they don't have your GMAT scores to judge you, correct, how else would they judge you? Is there anything else in your background or your profile that you would like to highlight in order for them to know that you can handle the quantitative rigor and the verbal skills needed to thrive in a B-school environment, correct? So please remember, these are the challenges. There are very few seats, as I told you. So that's going to be a, kind of thing. But if you want to give it a shot, then sure. What are the application requirements? Well, as all schools, the application requirement has not changed except for what I said regarding the GMAT scores. Application requirement still remains written essays. Okay, so they have a set of essays where they expect you to write on a particular topic. So you might have seen many of these schools have already published it. So you may want to go to our website. And by the way, Manisha, you can actually also give the YouTube link of the playlist that we have of all the application essays. So if you go to our YouTube channel, for the top 20-25 schools in the world, I have given a detailed analysis. Okay, what does the school look for? What are the deadlines? How should you approach the essay? How many words you need to write? What stories you need to pick? So all of those details are there in the video. You can have a look at the videos because the essay questions are not changed. So I'll just read out an essay that is asked at Kellogg this year. Values are what guide you in your work and life. What are the values that are important to you and how those values have influenced you, correct? Now, talking about something like values, right? It's not a question of people say, so there is 450 words. How long will it take for me to write 450 words? So I tell them that if you have clarity, you will be able to write 450 words in 1 hour. If you don't have clarity, right, it's not the task of typing the answer, correct? You need to have that clarity. So it's good to start looking at the essay requirement. And many of the schools, what they have started doing now is they are saying, you're looking at just the written word is not giving us a good idea of what the candidate is. So they have also started this video essay. So what happens after you submit your application, they will give you a link to a portal where you go and click. It will use your webcam in your laptop, and like a Zoom session or a this, where it will ask you questions on a prompt. Okay, so it will tell, okay, tell me about the time that you had a failure and what did you learn from it. You have 30 seconds to think and you have 16 seconds to talk about it, right? So those are video essays. Recommendation letters, in case you feel that, you know, it's a good time to approach your boss, because the last thing you want to do is, you know, with the market going haywire and himself worrying about things, right? Maybe you should kind of approach him, broach on this topic and say, I would be requiring recommendation letters. There are some fixed format for the recommendation letters. He doesn't need to write this to whomsoever it may concern or all that, okay? When you go to the application login, you will be asked to give an email address. You give that email address, send copy to recommender. Recommender will get a unique link that you will be able to log in, and it will save the progress, right? So there are a bunch of questions that he would need to answer about you. And most schools have made it mandatory to have a face-to-face interview, but I hope you understand what you mean by the word face-to-face, okay? So face-to-face would be virtual. What I mean is it is not telephonic. That's the only thing, which means it will be on Zoom or Skype or you know, any such platform, and you would either be talking to an alum or you will be talking to someone in the current admission committee. In some cases, what is going to happen is you will have two interviews, one with an alum at the initial part, but you will have a second round with the admission committee. And this is what I'm seeing in a lot of students this year. They are getting a call from the admission committee saying that it's an interview, but in that interview, what they are really checking is, boss, will you join this year or not? Correct? Like, I don't want to just give the seat to you, right? And then you say, I'm going to defer it. Correct? So that's really the interview process. All right. So what are the schools now? Okay. So these are the schools that we have. We have Duke, Fuqua, we have UNC, Kenan Flagler, we have Foster, we have Tufts, we have Carey, which is John Hopkins, McDonough, which is at Georgetown. We have the Wharton Business School. We have NYU. We have the Stern program. So these are some of the programs that are. So Manisha, do we have like one on the Kellogg thing, and do we have that updated? So I think that is one of the. So you can always get this information from the website. My recommendation would be to kind of get it from the website directly. Okay, but this gives you a sense of this. So as I said, this is just a sample, but the idea is, we have schools announcing it as we speak, correct? So for example, as someone mentioned, Yale has announced, right? So a lot of schools are giving. I'm not sure about Canadian schools. I, at this point, can talk only about the United Schools in the US, correct? So that's the list of schools. So my recommendation, look at this list. All of these schools, remember one more thing, if you apply now, you will not be able to apply in R1 next year, correct? So that is also an important consideration for you to have, right? That if you end up applying in, this month, correct? So we have that list, we'll be providing that list. So those who are attending this webinar, correct? So we will be updating that, right? But what has happened is a lot of the schools, this is just a sample list, correct? This is just a sample list. So the actual list is, yeah. Right? So I'm not going to be taking questions from the chat window. Sorry about that. I'm going to be taking it from the Q&A window, right? So let me just go ahead and, because let me just look at. So are all of you able to see the thank you screen? Yeah, okay, cool. So I'm going to take a couple of questions that I have from students. So I see a lot of students asking me about factual data. So my suggestion is to get in touch with someone at Crack Verbal, correct? We will make sure that we give you that information and we also help you assess your profile and give a very honest opinion of whether you should be applying in R4 or whether you should wait for R1. And I'm seeing that a lot of questions coming on that topic. So let me just say this, that I would ideally want you to apply in R1, correct? But again, as I said, it's a risk perception. The other thing that may also happen is R1 expect that the competition is going to shoot up. You remember I showed you that acceptance percentage, right? What is going to happen is a lot more students are going to apply, right? So that's where I think there is going to be a big challenge coming your way. All right. So we have about 10 minutes. So let me see if there are any questions that I can actually answer for you, right? I got another question, which is, what are the chances of getting in without a GMAT score? As I told you, you are limiting your options, correct? If you are applying in R4, only then would I say apply without a GMAT score, correct? But my suggestion is to take the GMAT. I feel that maybe by July, and I've mentioned this earlier, is that by July, maybe offline centers will open in non-hotspot areas, correct? So I don't know if the center in Mumbai, Andheri is going to open, correct? But I can tell you that the center in, let's say, Vellore, correct, which is inside VIT, that will open, correct? So it also depends on cities. It is very hard to kind of get that level of analysis at this point. I'm also getting questions around, older applicants. Is this the right time for me to do an MBA? My suggestion is, whether you're young, whether you're old, the idea is you want to do an MBA. Are you convincing yourself? Correct. If you have convinced yourself, then my suggestion is to kind of go for it. And this works on both ends of the spectrum. Correct. So I've also had people ask, that what should I do if I'm doing a master's? Correct. I don't have the experience. Instead of doing an MBA, should I do a master's? Whatever I told you, okay, all of that is applicable for masters also, correct? So that's what I would like you to think about, okay? Um, so just going back to the questions. So I see that a lot of you have posted questions. So my request would be to, kindly reach out to the Crack Verbal team, right? And we will help you with specific queries on your profile, because I won't be able to help all the questions that you have with regards to specific queries on your profile, right? So having a different profile will definitely help, correct? So that's definitely going to go into this. So someone has asked, what do you mean by an exceptional profile, right? So an exceptional profile would be, Manisha, can you also help me answer the questions in Q&A, please? So what you mean by an exceptional profile would be someone who have got great undergrad, correct? Someone who is really been stellar at work, correct? So you need to self-assess yourself, correct? That they don't even have your GMAT score. How many people, would have, background similar to yours? That would be the way I would look at it, correct? So, yeah. So someone has asked, isn't it better to apply in R1? See, applying in R1 versus R4 is really a question of your risk perception. So those who don't understand what is R1, R2, R3, I will tell you. So you have R1, which is the first round. R1 is nothing but round 1. Okay, it happens around September, October. And the same thing for R2, which is round 2, which is around Jan. Round 3, which is March. And round 4, which is about April, May. Okay, so that's how this works. This recording would be available to you. So don't worry on that. Another question, So I won't be able to answer technical questions that you can Google. Okay, so my humble request would be, can you please either reach out to the Crackpurple team or check with the website itself. I will be having another session again next week where I'm going to be talking about the advantages of like how should you be packaging yourself for an application, right? So I'll be having that as a separate application specific webinar, correct? People who apply in round 4, which is April, May, let us say you get a rejection in June, correct? R1 is in September. July, August, what will you go and tell them that you did for 2 months of your life, correct? So that's really the kind of problem that we have over here. Okay, so I see a lot of people asking me about what do you mean by exceptional thing. Students are asking me about scholarships. My take, yes, GMAT does involve like having a good GMAT score helps you in your scholarship. At this point, I'm not very sure how they are going to be considering scholarships because there is also another catch, which is a lot of endowments to universities have been frozen, correct? So think about it, most of it comes from alums. And if there is a recessionary market, that also impacts the kind of financial aid that they would be able to give out to students, right? I just have another 5 minutes. So I see people who are, so just a humble request, people are just chatting with me on the Q&A. So please understand, I have almost 70 questions in front of me. I would not be able to do justice to all of them. I hope you understand the nature of, webinar, which predominantly is a one-way. As I said, if you are a Crackpurple student, please, reach out to your contact. All Crackpurple students, we want to make sure that we help you. We are, also unique in that sense. We are a GMAT test prep company, but we also have MBA admission consulting. So we would definitely be able to help you. Okay. So I'm just going to take the last, 2 questions, right? The first question is from Piyush, who asks, as per your assumption now that the economy would be up after 2 years, so what should we do in 2021 for a 1-year MBA or a 2-year MBA? See, what I'm trying to say is the economy is going to get impacted in 2020, correct? Now, usually the severest of crisis will last for about a year. My worry would be for people who are joining a 1-year program like ISB today. If you are looking at joining an ISB in 2020, I don't know, first of all, when the school is going to start. But if you're going to graduate in 2021 March, I'm going to tell you the world is not going to look great, correct? Unfortunately, that's really the reality, correct? And think about it. These are people who got applied in January. When they applied in January also, we did not know how the world would look. In a matter of 3 months, the whole thing has changed, correct? So what I would say is, use your judgment. The situation is still evolving. And as I said, it is going to impact different industries differently. So if you come from hospitality or retail or aviation or any of those sectors, you know for a fact that, it is deeply impacted. So your consideration may be very different than, let's say, someone who's working in an industry where he sees potentially the next 1-2 years being a huge boom, correct? So that's really my take on the assumptions, that go walk in with assumptions in your mind, correct? And if you send in your assumptions to us, if you send in your profile to us, we will be glad. So Manisha, maybe you can just give the link for the profile evaluation also, correct? So we will kind of make sure that we help answer your queries on that, okay? So I'm just kind of going through the second question. Okay. What is, so Pratik had this question that the world economy has led to a loss in jobs at a phenomenal number. Do you think it would hamper job opportunities for migrants? So here is what I think is going to happen, Pratik. The requirement for you to be geographically located in the same place is going to go off. If your value is $120,000, people will pay you $120,000. They are not going to be cared whether you're going to sit in San Francisco and pay $5,000 a month for your one-bedroom house in Palo Alto, or if you're staying in Noida in a apartment, paying 50,000 and living like a king. Correct. So where I see the kind of world evolving again, 2023, 24. I am also crystal ball gazing into the future, but I think that serves because one of the biggest restrictions for many of these MBA jobs was the requirement for visa. See, the talent was never the problem. Google still needs people, Amazon still needs people, correct? And they know that there is a value of someone who's done an MBA from a school like, let's say, Chicago Booth or a Wharton or a Harvard. They are not going to say, oh, just because you're in India, I'm going to pay you in rupees. Really adding to your credential, to your resume is, a degree, correct? That is going to last you for a lifetime, correct? So that's the way I would look at the job scenario, right? I see a lot of you asking questions about this. Again, Jaskirat, I know you're right. You're asking the question again, but it just floods my Q&A window. I hope you understand, right? But I'll answer your question. I'll take that as the last question to answer. Why have top schools extended deadlines since they already have long wait lists that they can utilize? So the problem is even within the wait list, correct? That yield percentage is dropping. People are not wanting to start this year, correct? So, they just don't want to give it off, right? So that's what, that's really how it works, right? All right, so that's all I had time for. It's going to be about 8:30, but I hope, so Manisha has given you the link, right? So please make sure all of you who have attended, fill out the profile evaluation, talk to someone at Crack Verbal, and we will figure out a way forward for you. All right. Thanks a lot. It was great talking to you. I will make sure all your questions get answered. Thank you so much.